welcome here in our studio in Sarakunda. This is Star TV News and I am Dado Cham. In the headlines tonight, Red Cross present new ambulance services to President Barrow. We want no borders between the two nations, said Guinea-Bissau President-elect Mbalu. 3 years Jotna movement to protest with or without permit. On the international scene, security forces shot and killed 2 boys in Guinea-Conakry protests. Democrats release new documents on eve of Trump impeachment trial. Venezuela's Maduro gives States of the Union address. Those were our headlines, and now the news in details. The Secretary General of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society, Mr. Alaji ASC, on Tuesday, 14 January 2020, made a courtesy call on His Excellency President Adama Barrow, who is also a chief patron of the Gambia Red Cross Society. Binta Koli reports.
Mr. C updated President Barrow about the activities of the organization, discussed what they have to offer to better accompany the Gambia Red Cross in its humanitarian mission and to solicit his support. President Barrow commended the Gambia Red Cross for supporting government's effort and assured them of his government's support. The closed-door discussion was followed by a presentation of a new ambulance service, which was recently commissioned for the Gambia. After inspecting the sample ambulance and its inbuilt facilities, President Barrow applauded the initiative and assured them of creating the enabling environment for the creation of such service and improving on the existing ones. It is the first time in history that Red Cross ambulance in the Gambia will provide intensive care service as they escort patients to hospitals. Speaking to the press corps after the audience with the president, Mr. Alhaji Assi explained, "The ambulance can provide services that you can find in the ICU unit. People used to see ambulances transporting patients without treating them. This one treats on the spot and provides all the necessary care on the go." An outpatient clinic is currently being built at the Gambia Red Cross headquarters in Kanifing, with the aim of providing quality primary health care service to onboarding the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital from providing such. Mr. C reiterated their federation's commitment to Red Cross while soliciting the support of the government, private institutions and individuals to enable the ambulance service available in the entire country. Other members of the delegation comprise the President of the Gambia Red Cross Society, Mr. Jato Silla, the Secretary General Alassane Senghor, among others. For Star TV News, I am Binta Kuli.
The President-elect of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau, His Excellency Umaru Sissoco Embalu, has announced that once he assumes office, there will be no laissez-passer, a travel document that gives access to its holder into a foreign country between Bissau and Banjul. Jacqueline Colley files in this report.
I would like to affirm that the Gambia will be my priority once I am inaugurated. We do not want any laissez-passer between Banjul and Bissau. We want no borders between our citizens. This is my own decision, he told journalists following his closed-door meeting with President Barrow. The President-elect of Guinea-Bissau was on a day visit in the Gambia to strengthen bilateral ties between the two countries and to also formally invite President Barrow, who he described as a big brother, to his inauguration next month. He said his decision with President Barrow centered on forging the already strong ties between Bissau and Banjul, particularly in the areas of education, health, agriculture, tourism and culture, stressing that the better prospects lie ahead of Guinea-Bissau as a country after years of political instability. President-elect Mbablo said the new generation of Bissau Guineans will not repeat mistakes that keep their population in cycles of conflicts for decades. He expressed optimism that under his leadership there are higher hopes for regional integration, especially between the neighboring Gambia and Senegal. Jacqueline Colley, reporting for Star TV News.
Members of the Operation 2 Years Jotna remain determined to go ahead with their protests, which or without a permit, according to its co-chairperson, Matar Cisse. Police on Tuesday handed a letter to officials of 3 years, Jotna, informing them their request for a permit to stage a protest on Sunday has been rejected. Jacqueline Colley sent us this report.
Police Chief Momer Job told the anti-Barrow group he could not grant them a permit due to compelling national security and public safety concerns. The move has divided Gambian opinion. Operation 3 Years journalists say the 3-year deal that the President Barrow agreed to will end on 19 January. And in their protest last month, the group gave the president the choice of heeding their call or they will take to the streets again. Operation 3 Years Jodna put in a request on 3rd January for them to protest against President Barrow's rule for a second time in a month. The Inspector General of Police on Monday, however, denied the group permit, insisting the denial was due to compelling national security and public safety concerns. The police chief has meanwhile informed the army, the State Intelligence Service and the economic commander of his decision. Matar Cisse, the co-chairperson of the Operation 3 Years Jodna movement, spoke to reporters yesterday at the police headquarters in Banjul, where they received their letter of denial to protest. Mr. Cisse added that President Barrow did not reply to the letter they wrote to him to step down from power after his 3 years mandate ends. Matar Cisse added that the seed of dictatorship is being sown in the Gambia once again. Meanwhile, President Barrow has made it abundantly clear that he intends to complete the constitutional-backed 5-year term. In many interviews and comments, he says he will complete the 5-year term whether some people like it or not. Since then, the Operation 3 Years Jodna have been campaigning for his resignation. Jacqueline Colley, Star TV News.
A prominent and outspoken political activist and a law graduate at the University of the Gambia, Aliu Gako, has expressed his utmost disappointment over the decisions of the Inspector General of Police to deny anti-government group Operation 3 Years Jodna a permit to protest on the 19th and demand for President Barrow to resign. Tumani Colley reports.
President Adama Barrow and his coalition partners promised Gambians during the 2016 presidential campaign that they intend to rule for only 3 years and then step down, provided they win the election. But after they won, that promise seemed to have been thrown into the gutters. President Adama Barrow has made his decision clear that he intends to run for the complete 5 years, despite intense pressure for him to honor his promise and step aside. Operation 3 Years Jodna, a group meant to remind him of his promise, has organized a mass protest on the 16th of December 2019. The group petitioned the president to resign, but he paid no heed as he registered his political party 2 weeks later. The pressure group therefore requested for a permit to protest for the second time on the 19th of this month, as that day marks exactly 3 years since President Barrow officially took over office as president. Surprisingly, the group was denied permit by the police. The police cited security concerns as the reason they were denied a permit, even though the group promised it will be peaceful just like the first one. That decision does not go down well with Gambians, most notably Ali Gago, who has been very outspoken on the matter, especially on social media. Speaking to this media earlier today, Mr. Gago says he is very disappointed by the Inspector General of Police, Mamour Job, as he says citizens have every right to peaceful assembly.
It is really unfortunate. If you ask me, my impression is I'm really disappointed with the IGP, the Inspector General of Police, for willfully, I will say this, for willfully denying citizens their right to peaceful assembly, their right to exercise their power to hold the government to account. We, the IGP and the government, need to understand one thing. The reason why we toppled Yahya Jammeh 2016 through franchise was entirely based on the need to have progressive laws in order to ensure that there is an enabling environment for people to exercise their views. So the IGP being the case, the government being the case, are now trampling on those visions. The government being the case are now trampling on those rights of the citizens. So my impression is that I am very disappointed.
Section 25D of the 1997 Constitution states, every person shall have the right to freedom of assembly and demonstration peacefully and without arms. And according to Gago, citizens should never sit back and watch their right being tampered with by anybody. He says the security reasons that have been put forward by the police are bogus.
We have to understand that this security threat is now a music to our ears. African governments have been relying on this security threat. The real security threat are people in the government, people who are every day siphoning our resources, people are every day looting our coffers, people who are every day stealing the joy of the people. These are the real threat of the people, but not the citizens. It is really unfortunate that We voted for change, and still now we cannot get the change as per human right. It is high time that we respect the rights of the citizens, whether you are from a political party, you are from a class or a group. The issue is people's rights to hold the government to account must be respected.
Mr. Gako senses dictatorship already lurking around in this government. He advised the IGP to stop acting under the pleasure of the president.
The IGP has to understand that the reason why he is here to maintain law and order and to ensure that the rights that are in the Constitution are enforced. His principal mandate is to ensure that citizens exercise this right without any obstructions. So he is not here to deny people the right to protest. So to me, they are setting a bad precedent, and that precedent is a very authoritarian, a dictatorial, and a very autocratic, way of governing the people.
He also advised that the protests should hold because the denial has no ground. It does not make any sense to him. The leadership of the 3 years Jotna movement have also vowed to protest on the 19th with or without a permit. Tumani Koli reporting for Star TV.
We go in for a short break and we'll be back with the international news. And now the news beyond our borders. Security forces in Guinea have shot and killed 2 boys as anti-government protests continue into their 3rd month. The government says it will investigate their deaths, including 2 others killed since Monday. Protesters are demanding that President Alpha Conde steps down over news he is seeking to alter the constitution, which will allow him to stay in power for a 3rd term. Al Jazeera Victoria Gademba reports.
A show of force by police in the Guinean capital, Conakry. Protesters say President Alpha Conde is using the security forces to quash mounting demonstrations against his attempt to extend his time in power.
We are here for Act 2 of the strike to defend Guinea's constitution. We strike today because Alpha Conde wants a 3rd term. Down with the 3rd term in Guinea. We're hoping for the departure of Alpha Conde before the end of 2020.
Opposition leaders say despite the dangers, demonstrations against Conde will continue.
The government has no explanation for the fact that since the arrival of Alpha Conde, more than 130 people have been killed during political or trade union demonstrations. The government has never wanted an inquiry into the matter. It's rejecting responsibility.
Government leaders say people should have the option of voting to extend Conde's presidency. It's also promising to investigate the deaths of a number of protesters, including that of a 21-year-old student on Monday.
The body has been registered at the morgue by the Red Cross. The Ministry of Security and Civil Protection offers its sincere condolences to the family of the deceased and announces the opening of an investigation into the circumstances of the death of Thierno Mamadou Sow.
Tens of thousands have been protesting in the past 3 months. They're against Conde's plan to change the constitution, allowing him to seek a 3rd term. The 81-year-old has been in power for 19 years. For these protesters, that's more than enough. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
Democrats have provided new evidence on President Donald Trump's impeachment trial and puts pressure on Republicans to include witness testimony and the additional documents. The documents are from a close associate of Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who allegedly sought to get information from Ukraine that will discredit the president's political rival. Republicans are also being asked to vote yes. The former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, providing testimony at the trial. Al Jazeera Mike Hanna reports from Washington, D.C.
The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has guided the impeachment process to this point. But after the House vote, it will move to the Senate, where Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will effectively take control. He's adamant the Democratic majority in the House has failed to prove a case and argues it's not up to the Senate to do so.
The Constitution gives the sole power of impeachment to the House. If a House majority wants to impeach a president, the ball is in their court. But they have to do the work. They have to prove their case. Nothing in our history or our Constitution says a House majority can pass what amounts to a half-baked censure resolution and then insist that the Senate fill in the blanks.
But Senate rules mean McConnell might not actually have the final say. The procedure of the trial is decided by a simple majority, and Republican senators are under increasing pressure to break ranks and join Democratic Party members in seeking a full trial with witnesses. All it needs is 4 Republicans to do so.
To decide whether the president merits acquittal or removal from office, the Senate must conduct a fair trial. A fair trial has witnesses. A fair trial has relevant documents as a part of the record. A fair trial seeks the truth. No more, no less.
And new evidence has been provided by this man, Lev Parnas. He'd been indicted on a number of campaign finance charges and has now complied with a subpoena to hand over information connected to the Ukraine investigation. He was a close associate of President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and has provided documents that allegedly detail Giuliani's attempts to elicit information from Ukraine to use against former Vice President Joe Biden. This is a matter that lies at the heart of the move to impeach the president. The new untested evidence will be turned over to the Senate along with the articles of impeachment. Republican senators have already been under pressure to hear evidence from former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who announced earlier he would comply with the Senate subpoena to appear. The question is whether a minimum of 4 Republicans will join Democratic Party members in defying the Senate leader and the White House in demanding this new evidence be heard. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has called upon world organizations to come and see how the people of Venezuela choose their National Assembly this year, as he delivered his annual State of the Union speech after a year marked by both political and economic crisis. Al Jazeera Lucia Newman reports from Caracas on his vision for the year ahead and whether the country's deep political division can be overcome.
Traditional pomp and ceremony announced the arrival of Nicolás Maduro to deliver the annual President's State of the Nation address. But for the 5th year in a row, the ceremony didn't take place in the legislature, but in the chamber next door, the Constitutional Assembly, a superbody created by Maduro to bypass the until now opposition-controlled parliament.
We invite the European Union, the United Nations, the African Union, and all the organizations of the Community of Latin American States, and all world organizations, to come and see how the people of Venezuela choose their National Assembly this year, 2020. Doors are open to international accompaniment. Welcome, welcome.
Outside, supporters danced and celebrated, but opponents and at least 60 countries accuse Maduro of rigging the polls, including his 2018 re-election. Amid strong international criticism and economic sanctions, he said he was open to providing more guarantees of transparency. Maduro is raising the stakes by summoning the mainstream opposition to a so-called dialogue table, just days after their leader, Juan Guaidó, said that negotiations were out of the question because there are no conditions for them. And making those conditions even more difficult for Guaidó to swallow, Maduro is suggesting that even deputies who the opposition considers traitors to their cause sit down at the same table. Guaidó told us opponents will boycott elections unless there's an even playing field.
A fake election is a placebo. It's not a real approximation towards an alternative, because we could end up validating a dictatorship, and it would be very dangerous for Venezuela.
And as the political standoff heats up, ordinary Venezuelans continue struggling just to survive in what was once Latin America's most prosperous country. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Caracas.
Protesters are returning to the street using the slogan, "The revolution is coming back." Demonstrations against the political class have not stopped since mid-October, but the protests have become smaller as the movement momentum has slowed in recent weeks. The calls to action comes amid a worsening economic crisis and the absence of the government. Al Jazeera's Zina Kod reports from Beirut.
Protesters are back in the streets, blocking roads across Lebanon. They're trying to revive the momentum of a leaderless uprising against the political class that began almost 4 months ago. Demonstrations haven't stopped since, but they have been getting smaller.
The Lebanese army has been a little bit, and the Lebanese forces has been a little bit aggressive, in trying to extinguish this revolution and this uprising. And we cannot talk anymore to the political system and to this regime because they have not heard us. They've not heard what we're saying for the past 90 days.
Demonstrators say the governing elite has ignored their calls for change and are fighting amongst themselves for seats in the next cabinet instead of dealing with the near economic collapse.
We are all here today with our friends, my cousin, all together. Okay, here we don't have our rights in this country. We pay, but we don't have. They take, they don't give.
We pay 2 bills for electricity and we don't have electricity from 30 years. Okay, we need water.
Many Lebanese accuse those who have been in power for 3 decades of mismanagement and corruption.
A week of anger, that's how protesters are calling their latest action against the ruling authorities. They say their message is clear: we haven't given up and we aren't going away.
Protesters marched towards the home of Prime Minister-designate Hassan Diab to protest against the delay in forming a government independent of political parties. It seems Diab's cabinet lineup fulfills that demand, but it is believed he's no longer wanted by the ruling alliance that appointed him.
There was a misunderstanding from the start. The political parties were never going to agree to a purely technocrat government. That is not realistic. They weren't going to give up power, especially in light of regional developments.
Anger is growing, so is inflation. The local currency is devaluing. Public and health services are failing.
Hassan Diab is just a victim who wasted time and will not end up with a government. So now he's as the saying goes, dead man walking. Protesters have been waiting to see if government or the political parties can actually produce something of value, and they have failed.
Scenes from the early days of the uprising may have returned, but these protesters say this was always going to be a hard battle to win. Yet they're determined to stay on the front lines. Zara Khuder, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
And before we end the news, a recap of our main headlines. Red Cross present new ambulance services to President Barrow. We want no borders between the two nations, says Guinea-Bissau President-elect Mbalu. 3 years Jatna movement to protest with or without permit. That's all for this edition of the news. Please enjoy the rest of our programs and join us tomorrow for more news. Thank you.